Welcome to Sports Talk with L-Beasley. It is Thursday afternoon here for me in Detroit, Michigan, and I have plenty to discuss on today's show, so I'm not even going to waste time with the pleasantries. I'm just going to get straight into it. So start off today, I'm going to start off with some college basketball. Ohio State played Duke University the other day, and boy, was it a good game to watch. Pretty much Ohio State, dominated the first half. They played their game their way, their tempo. They out-muscled Duke. Duke looked, Duke looked like they got out-muscled. They looked tired. They looked like they weren't able, they pretty much hadn't made any adjustments. You could tell that Ohio State came out with a game plan and it rattled Duke, momentarily. And really the main reason Duke was able to stay in the game was, due to free throws and offensive rebounds and putbacks. That's how they stayed in the game. But whatever Coach K said in the locker room must have worked because they came out firing. And not necessarily firing from three exactly, but just firing on an aggressive standpoint. Duke basically came out playing like they were ready, like they should have played in the first half. Mason Plumlee was pretty much the only guy who played consistent throughout the first and the second half. But the freshman, Rasheed Suleiman, he came out firing, man. I think he had 17 points, 4 rebounds. He did an amazing job. And I had a chance to watch this kid in high school, but to see him play for Duke, in the ACC, to play, with such freedom and creativity as a freshman and be able to create offense the way that he did. And he just went, like I said, first half, I think he was maybe 0-2 in the first half. He wasn't aggressive. He couldn't score. And then the second half, it was pretty much the kid I saw his senior year in high school. And that's what was very impressive seeing this kid. And like I said, this is a kid definitely to watch in the future. I've said that before about him when he was in high school, but I'm definitely saying it now. This is somebody to look out for. If he can stay healthy, get stronger, he's a skinny guy. But this guy's 6'5". Might be 6'6", 6'7" with his wingspan. This kid is long. He's athletic. He's versatile. He can score from anywhere on the court. That jump shot's a little shifty, but, if you had Duke, that's going to get fixed. So, just to see him play the way he did was very impressive. And not just him, Quinn Cook stepped up. Kelly stepped up for Duke, and that's what it's about. And as far as Ohio State goes, in this game, for me, I've said it before about this Ohio State team. They're too self-reliant on Deshaun Thomas. You can't. This cannot just be Deshaun Thomas or Deshaun Thomas and Aaron Craft. And that was huge too. Aaron Craft struggled the other day. One thing I love about Aaron Craft, he struggled scoring. He's going to continue to play his part, whether it's defensively, whether it's creating for his teammates. Like I said, Aaron Craft. I'm a huge Aaron Craft fan. I'm not an Ohio State fan, but I'm an Aaron Craft fan. But he struggled, which was huge. But like I said, it was the same old. Nobody from Ohio State really stepped up. Smith Jr. was all over the place shooting bad shots. I didn't like the shot selection in the second half by these guys. A couple times they didn't even let 10 seconds go off the clock. They're just coming down and they're firing. And that's the problem with this Ohio State team. Just playing more mature and with better shot selection. Just, better overall, like I said, maturity period. But at the same time, this cannot just be a Deshaun Thomas team. That team is not going to be successful against those gridiron teams like Indiana, like Michigan, like Duke, like Syracuse, whoever you can think of who's going to be a top tier, to look out for. They're going to struggle because you can't just rely on Deshaun Thomas and it's not fair just to make it about Deshaun Thomas. So that was huge, and that's why, I think that they lost. But, big ups to Duke. They fought their way through it. Those are what top teams are supposed to do. I saw some things I didn't like about Duke as well. Like I said, Seth obviously has been a little bit iffy. But other than that, I still would like to see some better execution in the first half, but like I said, to win a tough game like that, even if it is at home, but it is against a top team like Ohio State, and you made the right adjustments and you showed up when you need to, so I can respect that. The other college game I want to discuss real briefly was Michigan State versus Miami. Michigan State coming in this game, I said it yesterday on my show. Miami can score. Miami averages 72 points per game right now. I think Miami finished that game with 67. Like I said, that was the thing with the Spartans. Everybody likes to say Spartans are, very good defensively. And I typically agree. But the other day, they could not keep Miami in front of them. They struggled in the post. They struggled on the outside. They struggled taking care of the ball. And I've said this so many times before about Michigan State, too. Other guys have to step up. Yesterday, it was pretty much Keith Applin, Brandon Dawson, and Matt Costello. That's who it was. Those are the main guys who made it in double digits, and that cannot happen. The rest of this Michigan State squad has to step up. Obviously, Gary Harris and Trice, Trees, they just got back. So they're not going to get heavy minutes. They're coming off injuries, but it's time for other guys to step up. Some other, freshmen. I know they're freshmen, but hey, you know what? You're walking into this. Most freshmen would kill to get the playing time and get this responsibility. And like I said, my sophomores, my juniors, it's time to step up. Knicks. Time for him to step up. No reason at all. You're supposed to be a captain. I want you to lead this team, but I want you to lead them as well with your production on the floor, not just your mouth. That's, not just your leadership through your mouth. I want you to lead through your leadership as far as a production standpoint on the court, and that's what Michigan State needs. They need other guys to step up, and they need to be able to score. But like I said, defensively, that was the problem. They couldn't stop anybody. They couldn't keep anybody in front of them. And I said Miami can score. Miami may not be ranked. Miami might not be the team to beat in the ACC, but they are a scoring team who's not afraid to play no comp, and they definitely look forward to every game. And I said that on my show. Learn to listen to me. Moving on to some NBA, boy, what a day that was. So I'll start off first with OKC versus Houston. I know y'all wanted me to start off with the other game first, but OKC and Houston, James Harden was back home, and he said it was just another game year, right? I mean, I'm sorry. When you go play against your old team, a rival team, I'm sorry, when it's something like that, it's not just another game. To me, it can never just be another game. Even in the back of your mind, you're taking it all in. He struggled. I think he shot 18% from the field. He just struggled. But like I said, from an OKC perspective, he should struggle. This guy played with you all for years. He's been with you since his career started, basically, in the NBA. So there was no reason. You know what he likes to do. You know how to defend him. Another thing, too, was just, the Houston Rockets just came in there. I mean, they didn't play with the same intensity I wanted to see. It was kind of like once James Harden went down, they went down. It was still too many turnovers. Kevin Durant was great. He balled out. I think he had, 37.7 rebounds. So he played great. He balled out. Serge Ibaka was huge. That's the Serge Ibaka to me that they should get every game. And I've said that countless times about this team. Until this team gets other players other than Kevin Durant to step up, and even Russell Westbrook when he decides to play, they need people like Serge Ibaka. That's the dude you gave the contract extension to over James Harden first, or the first one you gave the contract extension to. And like I said, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to average 23 points. He had 23 points and 9 rebounds that day. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to give you 15 and 10 or 20 and 10. 10 and 10, whatever. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to give you a double-double every game consistently. Russell Westbrook, his role, he's still turning the ball over a little bit, personally, too much for me, like I said, but he's not playing great. But let's see how he continues throughout the season. Kevin Martin is filling in his role very nicely, as expected. I wasn't worried about him. He knows what to do. He's been on plenty of teams. He knows how to adjust to a role, and he's willing to do that to help this contender team out. So, no question about that. Not even a concern. The other game I wanted to talk about, of course, was the Boston Celtics versus the Brooklyn Nets. We had a little bit of a brawl. And let me say, that's not really a brawl. That's Rondo throwing a hissy fit. Because a brawl was Pistons and Pacers. That was a brawl. I don't know what that was. Let's talk about the foul. Was it intentional? From my point of view, it was a half flop because I know how Kevin Garnett is. Don't nobody move Kevin Garnett but Kevin Garnett. I'm sorry. I just don't see it being that deep. To me, it didn't even seem like Chris really pushed him that go hard. And if he did, even Doc was saying the push was inappropriate and stuff like that, or Kevin Garnett could have got hurt. Please, Kevin Garnett get hurt walking down the court sometimes. I love Kevin Garnett, but let's just be honest. He's a little bit injury prone when he want to be. I didn't think that was personally to me, just looking at it, like I said, I didn't really look at it and say that was a hard foul. I saw a little bit of a force of a hand, but I didn't see it to the point where it was that ridiculous to fight over. As far as Rondo, this is one of the things that holds Rondo back from a top point guard perspective of just even maturity. This is not the first time Rondo has lost his cool, and this is what continues to be a problem with Rondo. You're chasing a record, but basically you're pissed. Your team is getting their butt kicked, so you just, you see Kevin get on the ground, you just basically start pushing Humphries. It wasn't that big of a deal. You go pick up Kevin Garnett, you tell him we're going to get back in this game. That's our fire-up moment, and you move on. It wasn't that big of a deal. That's just Rondo, like I said. And I love Rondo, but to me, that's just Rondo throwing a little hissy fit, man. Because, like I said, it's stuff like that makes me sometimes, get on Rondo. That maturity thing. Like I said, he's the main one sometimes who loses his cool. And if you're going to be the leader of my future team, especially as my point guard, I don't care what you can do. You're not going to do that. My point guards can't lose control like that. I was a point guard. I didn't lose control like that. Chris Paul doesn't lose control like that. Deron Williams doesn't lose control like that. You can't lose your control like that. You got to go pick up your teammate and do what you need to do and say, let's get back in this game. Now you eject it. You put your team in worse shape because now they don't have you. That's just, and that's why I said I love Rondo. I love Rondo's game. He get a jump shot, it's going to be on and popping for real. But I'm just... that really just pissed me off personally. And, Doc Rivers basically said also at the press conference that his team is playing soft. He said even that brawl, that's not toughness. That's basically stupidity. He didn't say it was stupidity. I'm saying it's stupidity. But he said he called his team soft, and I agree. They playing soft. You basically went into Brooklyn. I don't know. Maybe think you were just gonna win the game. I haven't liked the way the Celtics have been playing for the last couple games anyway. So they need to make some adjustments and do what they need to do. As far as the Brooklyn Nets, I like what I saw out of them. But more importantly, it seemed like maybe they gelled a little bit better. The only person who truly struggled was Deron Williams. He struggled the other day. Joe Johnson, for the first time, actually, did he outscore? I think he actually might have outscored Jerry Stackhouse this time. Which, Jerry Stackhouse has been huge, so far coming off the bench. Blatch and C.J. Watson both had big games. Well, not big games, but they had good, solid games, from a scoring standpoint. And like I said, that's something that this team needs. That's something Brooklyn needs. This team is not going to be successful just through this starting five when they do get going. You need your bench players to step up. You need Blatch. You need Watson. You need Stackhouse. You need Brooks once he gets back on the court. All these guys on the bench are going to have to step up because that's going to be one of the key determining factors, especially because their bench can score. I think that was one of the stats of the night was like, Brooklyn's bench outscored Boston's bench like heavy. So that's something to look out for. Like I said, Joe Johnson, if he can get going, and like I said, obviously the chemistry is going to come. Like I said, I'm not a 10-game judger and stuff like that. It takes a minute for these teams to get going when you got all this new chemistry, you got, coaches, new system, all this stuff. It's going to take a minute. And obviously they're not out the hole. They got to play Miami coming up. That's a big game for them. So we got to see how they come in against that game. But that's going to show me a lot about this team. But as I said, as they continue just to get better. Like I said, they got to get the chemistry together. Other players got to step up, learn their role, appreciate their role, and do it. Some guys are doing it, some aren't. It's all about consistency and finding that gel within your team. So I definitely want to just see how they're going to do with that for sure. And some other news, we got Les Miles. He's staying at LSU. Is that really a surprise? I didn't think he was leaving anyway. It's a nice deal by Arkansas, money wise, it's a nice little contract. But no, I'm not surprised that he's staying from what I hear. As we already know from reports, he signed a 7-year contract extension. From what I hear, it's supposed to be like maybe $4.3 million a year annually. So he's getting pretty good. He's getting pretty good money, for his worth. He loves LSU. Like I said, I'm not a real big Les Miles fan, because I'm a Michigan fan. Most people probably know why. Not a surprise at all. Not a surprise. And other news too, I forgot to mention this with the NBA, with the New York, it's always this battle of Brooklyn and the New York Knicks. Well, for the Knicks, Amar'e Stoudamire has basically been saying, and people who have been saying, sources close to the situation, that he is willing to do his part for the New York Knicks and come off the bench and be that sixth man. Now, I'm happy to hear this. I'm happy. But as most people who watch my show, you all know how I am. Actions speak louder than words. You can say a lot of things, but are you going to do it? So, like I said, at the end of the day, right now he's saying, yeah. He's saying, and it's been projected that he could come back in December. So that's that, so we might get our chance before the new year comes to see what he can do. But, like I said, it's all about what you want. If you want to win, you want to give your team the best chance of winning the ring, I think you got to do what you need to do. Which right now, from what we've seen, is coming off the bench. It doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And like I said, in my opinion, I don't get what the problem is with the sixth man of the year being a sixth man anyway. You got 6 man, you can get an award for it. You got the 6 man of the year award for it. And like I said, it's such a key role. Look at Manu Ginobili. Look at Jason Terry. I can go on and on. List goes on and on with, great 6 mans who had an impact on their team. And that's what you're looking for. Like I said, if you are focused on your points, your scoring record, your rebound record, all this other crap, then you must not want the ring. Because that's what personally my goal would be. Is to get a ring if I'm Amar'e's age on this team. So, I'm happy to hear him say it, but like I said, at the end of the day, I still just want to see when push comes to shove, once you do get on the court, if your point production is not the same, are you willing to do it? But like I said, I'm happy to hear it. Like I said, it's a maturity standpoint, but like I said, let's see what happens once he gets on the court. Let's see, like we said, this is going to be an adjustment too. He hasn't come off the bench in a while. So, just seeing him come off the bench and see how he plays and how he fits in and, who's going to be out there with him when he is on the court, that's going to be determining. I know him and Raymond Felton always had pretty good chemistry back when Raymond was in New York before he got traded. Then, obviously back now. So I want to see how they're going to do that. Once Jason Kidd gets back on the court, obviously he's a creator. So, this should be fine. Like I said, Amar'e Stoudamire is going to be key coming off the bench. He's going to be real key. He's going to bring that intensity along with a couple other good players on the bench. And like I said, that's another added piece of great depth already to this New York Knicks team. That's one thing New York Knicks have, is depth. They have athleticism. They have youth. They have creators. They definitely have a scorer in Melo. They have a good coach, in my opinion, in Woodson, because I love Woodson. So, play a role, Amar'e, and I'm pretty sure you'll have a chance to fight for that ring. And now, will you win the ring? I ain't going to say it all that right now, because, like I said, we only, 15, 20 games in. I ain't going to say all that yet. But you'll have a chance to fight for the ring. With the arsenal that this New York Knicks team has, with the coaching staff that they have, the players that they have, there's no reason why. No reason at all that they cannot contend if they stay healthy, they play their roles, and they stay hungry and stay humble. You do that, there's no reason at all you can't compete. Like I said, I don't know if you're going to win yet because, I ain't giving out no predictions yet. But, no reason at all they can't be successful. In other news, Derek Fisher is going to be a Dallas Maverick. And, this is really not like big news per se, but just, kind of just going into it. One thing he's going to bring to this team really just is that veteran leadership. You got young guards like Bobois. Obviously, you got my boy Darren Collison, who most people know that I love. He's going to bring a leadership role to them. He's going to help them get better in their own way. And then he's that clutch guy for you. We all know, Derek Fisher may not do nothing during the regular season, but anybody who watched the Lakers, whether you hate the Lakers or you love the Lakers, Derek Fisher was one of those people who, in every series that the Lakers probably won a championship that he was on, he had a key shot in one of them games, whether it was in the Western Conference Finals, whether it was in the NBA Finals. I don't care if it was in the first round of the playoffs, second round. It doesn't matter. He has always had a key shot, a key moment, and that Laker legacy back when he was there. And even when he wasn't a Laker, he would still make key shots. Do I need to mention the time he was playing for the Jazz and he came in and after his coming in missing most of the game and hit that huge shot. Come on, Derek Fisher is a he's a clutch guy. Like I said, if anything, he brings more wisdom. He brings more veteranship and leadership to this team. Like I said, you don't really need him necessarily to come out here and lead this team per se. Like I said, you got Bobois. He's going to help Bobois coming off the bench. Like I said, you got Darren Collison. He may not, I don't think he's going to necessarily come in there and slow things down. Like I said, he could always just be your shooter. This might be a situation where you can put him out on the wing and just say, Derek, just get ready to shoot. Because, once Dirk get back, that's going to, when Dirk back on the court, once Dirk gets back on the court, that's going to open up some things. So this just opens up the door. He doesn't necessarily even have to be that creator. He might be able to actually just sit back, relax, and be that shooter. But no matter what his role is, as long as he's hitting his jump shot, he continues to be that veteran leader. It's not a bad move at all. So, we'll see how it works out once he actually gets on the court and whatnot. But so far, like I said, it's not a big, huge move, but, it's just an interesting move. In football, Tyrann Mathieu, also known as the Honey Badger, has basically said that he is going to enter the NFL draft, the 2013 NFL draft. He basically said, it's time for him to move on. He basically said this: I am sorry that I was not able to complete my journey at LSU, but I will always support LSU in any way that I can. To my teammates, you are my brothers. You have kept me going. I will do my best to make all of you proud of me. That was basically his statement, or at least part of the statement that I heard that was crucial. But it's no question that Tyrann Mathieu is a legit. We go back to his, 2011 impact. He finished 5th, I think, in the 2011 Heisman Trophy voting. Third best finish by a defensive player in the last 20 years. I think only Charles Woodson, Ndamukong Suh, and Marvin Jones had better showings. If we start going to his achievements, he had 6 forced fumbles. That's most by DB in FBS history. 3rd in FBS in punt return yards, 2 touchdowns, and I think he was 3 of 6 touchdown scores while LSU trailing. So this guy has potential. We know that, but at the same time, my main 2 concerns with him going to draft, obviously, the draft is not far away, but it's not right around the corner either. So, at the end of the day with the NFL draft, my thoughts basically are this. We got to see what he can do on the field. That's one thing about him. He hasn't been, we know he said, he was working out and stuff like that, but we need to see where his conditioning is, where his weight is, all these different things that go into it. But, he's going to have time to do that. Obviously, combine, all that stuff coming up, everybody has, their all things. So he's going to have time to show us that. And then just the big question is just, his issues with the drugs and, getting into trouble. That's really the big thing too. As we know, the NFL, unfortunately gets a lot of these players, sometimes they're no trouble when they come, but they become trouble once they're in the NFL. Others have trouble while they're in college and it transfers over to the NFL, and then some are clean cut. They do what they're supposed to do, and then you got the ones who, didn't do much in college. Like I said, it's a different world with the NFL now. So it's just a big thing. Like I said, it's just, what team he goes to if he does get drafted. Like I said, obviously it's hard to pick right now. Oh, is he a top pick or is he number one? We don't know anyway because we don't even know who's going to have the first pick. Well, I mean, we can assume who's going to have the first pick based off records. But, obviously we just need to see what's going to happen. We don't know who's entering the draft fully yet, at all, for football yet. So, we just got to watch and see. But, I mean, it's no question he's a talented guy. We just need to see what he's going to do, once he gets back on the field because he has been off of it. He hasn't played, in a game in, like a year. So we definitely going a year or longer. So we're going to see, how he looks as far as that goes. And like I said, just the questions of, can he stay on point? Can he handle his business and do what he needs to do? Which, hopefully he can. Because, I mean, like I said, I liked the kid when he was in college, and hopefully he can have a successful life and career no matter what he does, whether it's on the court or, on the court, whether it's on the field, on the football field or, or it's just as a businessman or whatever he's doing. So, nothing but success for the guy, but we'll see what happens. The other news that was going on is the 49ers. Yeah, quarterback situation is, basically it's supposed to be a week by week decision by Jim Harbaugh and I guess his staff. Basically, that's been the talk, like this is going to be a week to week thing. And as you guessed, he's keeping Kaepernick, Kaepernick at the quarterback, as far as starter. And at this point, like I said, I don't even really care no more. Like I said, I've voiced my opinion already. Like I told people, I have no issue with Colin Kaepernick. I have no issue with Alex Smith. Both quarterbacks are great. My main question was, like I said, why now? That's always been my question, and like I said, not why to you, not why to the San Francisco fans, not why to Colin Kaepernick, but why to Jim Harbaugh? Why all of a sudden do you have this great belief in Colin Kaepernick when I didn't, like I said, I know you had belief in him because like I said, you went and drafted him. I knew that. Like I said, that was never a question. You went and drafted the dude, but I knew you had belief in the guy. But like I said, it's just very funny. Alex Smith had a great game. Even the day he got the concussion, only had one incomplete pass, has been having a great season. And like I said, you bench him, for Kaepernick. And like I said, you continue to bench him for Kaepernick. But like I said, at this point, I said my piece. Like I said, I felt it was always Alex Smith's job to lose. But at this point, that's, that ship has sailed. At this point, according to the sources, it's still supposed to be a week-to-week decision. So I don't know if that means until Kaepernick messes up and then you feel the pressure put Alex Smith. I mean, at this point, just say you're going to make Kaepernick the starter. But, we're going to see what happens. Like I said, they play St. Louis. Janoris Jenkins had a huge game last week for them. So just seeing, how they come about, as far as checking them and stuff. And obviously I don't think, St. Louis is this great almighty defensive team. But, we'll see how they come out. They show fight, just like San Francisco shows fight. As far as the players, the players seem to be pretty relaxed about this whole quarterback. At least from a media standpoint with the interviews, they seem to be, a couple of them said, they just feel blessed to have two quarterbacks, who they can count on, whether it be Alex or Kaepernick. Others just said, I remember Michael Crabtree, he actually said, with the defense that we have, at quarterback, don't even really matter, which I agree. Because like I said, in my opinion, the defense won that game for them when they played the Saints. So, it's all good, from this perspective. Like I said, I know people want, some people wanted to see if I'm going to say something negative about this whole situation. Others are just, eager to hear me say something about it. And like I said, at this point, I said what I had to say on the whole 49er issue. It was, to me, always Alex Smith's job to lose. My more question is to Jim Harbaugh and his so-called, he's what we need. Like I said, where was his belief at the beginning of the year when you didn't so-called want Alex Smith after you didn't get paid Manning? Where was all this then? Like I said, we wouldn't even be talking about Colin Kaepernick if Alex Smith hadn't got hurt. So, like I said, I'm done with it. Happy for Colin Kaepernick. Keep playing well because I want you to succeed. Alex Smith, just keep hanging in there. We don't know what's going to happen. You might be a San Francisco 49er. You might not. You might end up getting, opportunity somewhere else to show your skills. So we definitely going to see what happens. But at this point, just happy for Colin Kaepernick. I don't question him. My questions go to Jim Harbaugh, but I can't talk to him right now. So. Happy for Colin Kaepernick. We'll see what he does against the Rams. Definitely should be a good game. Like I said, definitely just want to see, how Janoris Jenkins is going to play. Janoris Jenkins played very well last week. Speaking of football and the Saints play tonight against the Atlanta Falcons, Thursday night football matchup. Falcons got this game at home. And, main thing I'm really looking for in this game is offense and defense, of course. But, if I'm the Saints, you got to slow down Julio Jones and company, basically, as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. That's the thing about Atlanta. Atlanta has serious weapons. They have an they're one of the elite passing teams in the NFL. You got receivers like Tony Gonzalez, Roddy White, Julio Jones. Obviously, you got running back Michael Turner. Then you got Rodgers, I love Rodgers, my guy who can go on the outside, who can be a little bit of a receiver, guy who's going to, make you miss. I love his game. So if I'm New Orleans, you want to challenge this team, and this is going to be a hard battle, really no different than it was when you play San Francisco. It's going to be hard. This is one thing that makes Atlanta elite is the fact that, hey, they are two-dimensional offense. They can run the ball against you, and they can throw the ball against you. But, the Falcons receiving corps has dropped a lot of passes this year. As elite as they have been, they have dropped a lot of passes. So I do just want to kind of see, like I said, what Saints come out with. What do they try to do? Like I said, they did a pretty good job against the 49ers. Like I said, they didn't really allow the 49ers to get in the red zone. But, let's see if they can do the same thing here with Atlanta. And then offensively, like I said, just seeing what, Drew Brees is going to do for this team. And the big thing that always happens in this game is just, it's always plenty of offense. That's one thing about this team. It's always plenty of offense on both sides. So I'm really just looking to see, both teams allow plenty of yards. I think New Orleans allows like 450 yards per game, and Atlanta generally, allows 345 yards. So these are not two teams who are known for like keeping these teams, basically, stopping them. They're not known for keeping them contained. So I want to just see, is this going to be a shootout? Just as much as I'm questioning, can the Saints stop Atlanta? Can the Atlanta Falcons stop this, the New Orleans Saints? So that's really the thing I'm looking at. And then, Atlanta has been in some close games. So if this does come out to a shootout, which quarterback is going to be able to lead their team? Who's going to make the crucial play on defense? Like I said, one of the crucial plays for New Orleans last week was those 2 picks by Drew Brees. Like I said, I think if you don't throw them, you win the game. So, just seeing what's going to happen once it gets in crunch time. Like I said, both teams are not necessarily known for their defense. They're known for their great offense. Both have improved defensively, but they're not known for their great defense. Like I said, just seeing what both teams basically do. Like I said, this does become a shootout. Which team, quarterback can lead their offense, or what defensive member, or, can make the big team. I mean, not the big team, the big play, for their team. So that's really what I'm looking forward to. Like I said, it's going to be like I said, should be a good game. And New Orleans definitely is feeling the pressure because they need to win some games, like all their games coming up. So they're definitely feeling the heat about that. So I just want to see how they're going to play. But other than that, I'm looking forward to the game. Can't wait to watch it. I'm sure you feel the same way. So once again, thank you for tuning in to my show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you agree, you disagree. So like I said, leave those comments. I'm doing my best. Like I said, when I do see a comment, or if you ask me a question or whatever, to comment back and let you know. Yeah, I agree. I disagree. Maybe have a little fun argument with you, depending on what you say. Just keep it positive. Don't insult anybody. Definitely don't insult me, because that's a problem. Plus, it'll be deleted. But just like I said, keep the comments coming. I'm trying to interact with you guys. If you want me to discuss a specific topic, guys, like I keep trying to tell you guys, if it's something I'm missing or something I have yet to talk about, let me know. I'm always happy to discuss any topic that my fans request. So I say it could be about a coach, a player, a team. It doesn't matter. Let me know. Leave it, on the message board on YouTube, on my site. Email me, tweet me, message me, whatever. If you want me to be a guest on your show, let me know. Like I said, constantly keep sending me, people keep sending me emails and invites, and I'm loving it. So definitely, guys, if you want to be a guest on your show, please let me know. Always happy to network with other sport broadcasters and let other people know my views. So definitely, if you want me to be a guest on your show, let me know. Go check out MoneyBallSportswear.com. They are a huge supporter of me and my show, Sports Talk with L-Beasley. So go check them out. The only way to ball is Moneyball. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow.